So exactly, I mean, JETPs were explained by Andrew, and they are directed to countries that use coal, so that we help them with the transition, or the G7 helps them with the transition to renewable energy. And then countries that don't use coal, but do have adaptation plans, do have mitigation plans, do have biodiversity plans, what do they do? So in our case, and in preparation for COP, Egypt has its Climate Strategy 2050. We announced our new NDCs. And leveraging on the partnership we have with the international community, with our development partners, be it bilateral or multilateral, we put together Egypt's country platform for the nexus of water, food, and energy, NWFE, and that is pronounced in Arabic Nuwafi, and that means fulfilling pledges. So this COP was from pledges to implementation. During COP27, let me go back to the finance, because one of the key, I don't want to say excuse, but one of the what is labeled as a stumbling block is that there's the money, but we don't have enough projects, or that the countries are not clear about their objectives, or the communities are not involved. So we try to create a platform where we say we own it. These projects are linked to the NDCs, so they are adding to the national goals and also to the global goals. And at the same time, and given that we are an African nation, adaptation is important. So we do have adaptation projects, and mitigation is important, and they are linked. And this comes the nexus of water, food, and energy. And we have been able to mobilize financing. And the idea is, as you mentioned, multi-stakeholders. So we have the government there. We have a grant component. We have concessional finance. These are, all financing tools that are designed to bring in private investments, because very important in the climate discussion, we don't want to add more debt. Yeah. We actually want to encourage private sector, and philanthropy has a big role to play, because they can catalyze through grant components. So this is a practical example that we try to put together, and between now and next November, which is our presidency, is to show the progress on what we've done with Nuwafi as a country-led platform. The other important aspect on financing, and having debt swaps for nature, very, very important. There are carbon credits in the carbon market, but also we've been discussing, and this was one of the outcomes of work we've done in preparation for COP, also in the Sharm el-Sheikh guidebook for just financing, is resilience credits. So when we have adaptation, or if we have a biodiversity project, how can we create resilience credits to also attract participation from community or from the private sector? So it's given scope for us to think together. With EFAD, this resilience credit came up. Now we are discussing with Citibank and others, how can we actually operationalize it? So it's not just the 30-30 ambition, but it's also the ambition of using our imagination with tools to accelerate and help us fulfill the ambition itself.
Great. And I was at a very interesting meeting this morning with Bank of America as well, talking on this topic. And I think the potential to mobilize the GFANS community around this agenda even more so than
GFANS are part of the platform as well. Yep. So in this country platform, we tried to put everyone who was saying we are not there because the countries are not ready with projects. We were able to bring them on board, and now moving forward on the concept of there's no metric when it comes to adaptation, nature, and so forth. The private sector always looks at CO2 emissions. This is how we are contributing to reducing it. We had a discussion here in May at the WEF. There's appetite to participate, but how can I on my list say I am doing climate action when I don't know exactly what you mean by adaptation? So I think the experts need to try and identify scientifically how each dollar that is put in is going to bring some sort of outcome. I think that is not been fully identified, and I think if we do a little bit of effort on that, more private sector money can flow in. The business case is another one. I used to be Minister of Tourism before international cooperation, and definitely the management of protected areas is extremely profitable. But of course, sustainability and protection has to be, so that the regulation is such that you are not over, there's no over tourism, etc., etc. But there is money to be made if it is properly regulated in a certain way. The third point is everybody's talking about blended finance to attract and catalyze private sector, and that blended finance does require again, either grants from multilateral development banks, from philanthropy. So there are models that can push that forward. We have also discussions on blue bonds, which is another tool. Green bonds have already been issued in many countries. So it's the corporates that we talk to in different places are interested, but I think there's a little bit of homework to be done on the measurement. And also on, as I mentioned, using our imagination with the and practicality when it comes to innovative financing tools.
Yeah, yeah. So both, sort of respect and do no harm, and innovate and
yes.
create, and then be accountable.
Of course, Montreal, as was mentioned, was truly a breakthrough, and it comes after a COP in Sharm el-Sheikh, which emphasized very powerfully the importance of adaptation and resilience. And also, for the first time, a trust fund as a discussion for loss and damage. And therefore, the idea of the 30 by 30 is to ensure that we move forward so that this does not move into loss and damage. That's the whole point. If we're able to adapt, if we're able to protect the areas, as was mentioned, technical advisory, policy is extremely important, creating more awareness, those who have worked in order to scale to other areas. All of these are very important frameworks that need to be done and need to be done very quickly. But the concept of climate, very much integrated, mitigation, adaptation, resilience, biodiversity, all of this to ensure that we don't move into or drop off the cliff so that we go into a discussion of loss and damage, and then all the definitions of what we mean, because people, there's a livelihood impact. It's not just about the land that is lost or the biodiversity that is lost that could not be replenished, but it's also all the livelihood around these areas. How do we quantify that? So the 30 by 30 is, in my view, quite realistic, because what you lose between now and 2030, if we don't do this, is even more in magnitude. But very practical issues need to be addressed. Financing. And now, when we take a look at the spectrum, we need financing for adaptation and resilience. We need financing for mitigation. We need financing for biodiversity. So there needs to be, we need to think creatively about how we go forward. Nonetheless, I believe that where we are today in terms of the narrative, in terms of more collaboration, private sector is coming in, more philanthropy is coming in more, and also the communities, particularly in the protected areas, are working very hard to within that ecosystem. So it's now, the WEF today is, the title is Cooperation in a Fragmented World, but this is something that really brings communities. Will was part of that discussion that we had in May, and I think that we need to take that forward. I see Jen here in the audience. We launched the philanthropy part yesterday, and I think that the metric that could be provided, we can move that forward through this work. Resilience credits, EFAD is taking the lead with us, and it's exactly to look at, to use the projects with farmers in order to see how we can quantify. And finally, on the intermediate goals or the dates in between, I think we depend on the envoy, special envoy in Vancouver, maybe to push that forward.